A cold-hearted CEO hires her to fix his life, not knowing she's the one woman capable of healing the wounds he denies. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Meet Jack Parker, a ruthless CEO with a heart hardened by years of business battles and personal loss. At the age of 40, Jack had everything: wealth, power, and respect, but nothing that truly mattered. His personal life was a mess, and he carried a cold, calculating demeanor wherever he went. Jack was the type of man who didn't trust anyone, not even himself. The loneliness that followed him every day was something he couldn't shake. It wasn't just the isolation of being at the top, it was the emotional scars he had buried deep within him. He had no time for emotions or relationships, his life was all about business. Until one day, a proposal crossed his path that would change everything. Emily Lawson, a woman with no apparent connection to the world of high finance, was hired to fix Jack's life. She was a life coach, a healer of sorts, known for her unique approach to helping individuals face their deepest fears and emotions. Her task was clear: help Jack overcome his emotional baggage, reconnect with the world, and lead his company to greater heights. But little did Jack know, Emily was far more than just a hired professional. She was the one person capable of healing the wounds he had been denying for years. Emily entered Jack's world with no expectations, but with a quiet determination. She had heard stories about the cold-hearted CEO, a man who never showed his true feelings, but she didn't judge him. Instead, she approached the task with an open heart, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Jack, on the other hand, was skeptical. He didn't believe that anyone, least of all someone like Emily, could help him. He saw her as just another distraction in his world of cold calculations and business strategies. However, the more time they spent together, the more Jack began to feel a strange sense of calm when Emily was around. For the first time in years, he found himself opening up, even if only a little. Emily never pushed him. She simply listened, offered gentle advice, and gave him the space to confront his past. It wasn't long before Jack realized that Emily's presence was doing something to him, something he couldn't quite explain. As the days went by, Jack started to let go of his rigid control. He began to understand the emotions he had buried for so long. But it wasn't just about him healing. Jack found himself drawn to Emily in ways he never expected. She was kind, genuine, and unafraid to show the world her true self. For the first time in his life, Jack was confronted with a reality he had tried so hard to avoid: the possibility of love, of vulnerability, of being truly seen. Little did Jack know, Emily's own journey was just beginning, and her past was more intertwined with his than he could ever imagine. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. As days passed, Jack Parker began to notice subtle changes within himself. He had always believed that his life was about control, about making decisions with precision and logic, but Emily's presence stirred something deep inside him, a feeling he had long since buried. Emily, on the other hand, had been cautious at first, unsure of what to expect from a man like Jack. But as they spent more time together, she began to see the cracks in his armor, the vulnerability he refused to acknowledge. Despite the cold, professional exterior Jack put up, Emily could tell that he was beginning to trust her, little by little. It started with small conversations, with Jack opening up about things he had never shared with anyone. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at work, Jack found himself sitting across from Emily in his office. He had invited her in, something he would never have done before. Emily, sensing his unease, leaned forward slightly, her voice calm and reassuring. "Jack, you don't have to keep everything locked inside. You've been carrying this weight for so long. It's okay to let go," she said softly. Jack met her gaze, his eyes betraying a depth of emotion he had never allowed anyone to see. He didn't say anything at first, but the silence between them spoke volumes. He wanted to share his pain, to let go of the anger and fear that had held him captive for years. But there was something inside him, something that kept him from fully surrendering to the vulnerability she was offering. "I don't know how," Jack finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent my whole life building this wall around myself. It's hard to even know where to start." Emily smiled gently, her expression understanding. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Jack. We'll take it one step at a time. I'm here with you, every step of the way." That night, as Jack lay awake in his bed, he couldn't stop thinking about her words. Emily's presence was like a beacon of light in the dark, guiding him toward a place he had never allowed himself to go, the place of emotional healing. The next day, Jack made a decision. He would stop fighting it. He would let Emily in, let her help him confront the past he had been running from for so long. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. As the days turned into weeks, Jack began to slowly unravel the layers of his carefully constructed persona. Emily was there, patient and understanding, never pushing him but always encouraging him to take the next step. One afternoon, after a particularly productive therapy session, Jack found himself standing in front of the window of his penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. Emily had left for the day, but something inside him was different. He no longer felt as cold, as distant from the world. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel. It wasn't just the therapy sessions or the constant conversations with Emily that had made the difference. It was the realization that there was something real, something human, that he had been missing all these years. The connections, the love, the vulnerability, these were the things that truly mattered. That night, Jack decided to invite Emily to dinner. He hadn't done anything like this before. It was simple, just the two of them at a quiet restaurant, but to him, it felt like a step toward something bigger. He wasn't sure what that something was yet, but he knew that it had to do with Emily. As they sat across from each other, enjoying the soft music and the warm atmosphere, Jack found himself more relaxed than he had ever been in her presence. The barriers that had once kept him from truly connecting with anyone were slowly dissolving, and he could feel a growing sense of connection between them. "You know," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never thought I'd be doing this, having a real conversation, I mean. I've spent so much time trying to keep everything under control, trying to appear perfect. But I've learned, it's okay to not be perfect." Emily smiled softly, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Nobody's perfect, Jack. But what matters is that you're trying. You're learning to let go, and that's the most important thing." Jack nodded, feeling something shift within him. He wasn't sure where this journey with Emily was going, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't walking this path alone anymore. As the night went on, Jack realized that he had begun to trust Emily in a way he hadn't trusted anyone in years. It wasn't just about fixing his life anymore, it was about finding something deeper, something real. And maybe, just maybe, it was about healing the wounds he had spent so long denying. Emily's presence in his life was no longer just about therapy or work, it was about connection, about two people helping each other heal in ways they never thought possible. As they finished their meal, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for this woman who had come into his life when he least expected it. Little did he know, their journey together was far from over. And as they stepped out of the restaurant into the cool night air, Jack couldn't help but feel that, for the first time in a long time, his life had a new direction. As the weeks passed, Jack Parker found himself becoming more and more attuned to the changes in his life. What had once been a business transaction, a cold agreement to fix his life, was slowly turning into something far deeper, something he had never expected. Emily Lawson had become a presence in his life, not just as a consultant, but as someone who understood him in ways he had never allowed anyone to. The walls he had spent years building up began to crumble, piece by piece, each conversation, each shared moment with Emily pushing him closer to the person he had always been afraid to be. Yet, even as Jack allowed himself to feel, there was a lingering fear deep within him. He had never been good at vulnerability, and now that he was starting to open up, he feared what it would mean for him. What would happen if he let go completely? What would happen if he allowed himself to love That fear had kept him in control for so long, and now, it was the very thing standing in the way of his happiness. One evening, as they sat together in Jack's office after another session, Emily could see the inner turmoil on his face. "Jack," she said gently, "you don't have to be afraid of what's coming next. It's okay to feel." Jack looked at her, his expression guarded. "I've spent my whole life avoiding feelings," he said quietly. "I'm not sure I know how to do this." Emily smiled softly, leaning forward. "That's exactly why you have to. You've been hiding for so long. You deserve to be happy, Jack." The sincerity in her voice hit him harder than anything else. Emily wasn't asking him to be perfect, she was asking him to be real. And for the first time in his life, Jack wasn't sure if he was ready to deny that part of himself any longer. It was a moment of reckoning, a quiet realization that he had been living a life of avoidance, and that the person who could help him change that was right in front of him. Still, Jack hesitated. He had spent years focusing on work, on building his empire, and now that things were beginning to feel uncertain, he was afraid. He didn't know how to balance the man he had been with the man he wanted to become. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. Jack found himself grappling with his emotions more than ever. He would go to work, but his mind would wander to thoughts of Emily and what she was making him confront. On one of those days, Emily called him unexpectedly. "Jack," she said, "I want you to come with me to an event this weekend. It's a charity gala, and I think it would be a good opportunity for you to step out of your comfort zone." Jack was taken aback. A charity event? He had always avoided public events, especially ones that involved emotions. But Emily's voice was gentle, encouraging, and he found himself agreeing. "All right, I'll go," he said, surprising even himself. That Saturday evening, Jack stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tuxedo, feeling a nervousness he couldn't explain. This was a new world for him, a world where his image wasn't controlled by power or money, but by something much more vulnerable. When he arrived at the gala, Emily was already there, looking stunning in her evening dress. She smiled at him as he walked up, her warmth instantly putting him at ease. "You look great," she said, giving him a reassuring glance. "This is the first step, Jack." As the night went on, Jack found himself interacting with people in a way he had never done before. The conversations were light, the mood was relaxed, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of ease. Emily was by his side, guiding him through the social dynamics with grace, but something had changed. Jack was no longer the cold, distant CEO. He was beginning to let people in, to connect with them on a more human level. As the night drew to a close, Emily took his hand, her touch gentle yet firm. "You did great," she said softly. "You're ready for more than just this, Jack." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I never thought I could do something like this," he admitted, his voice filled with awe. "But I think you're right. Maybe I've been hiding for too long." Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It's just the beginning, Jack. The beginning of something real." In that moment, Jack realized that the fear he had been holding onto wasn't the obstacle he thought it was. It was the key to everything he wanted. The realization that he didn't have to be perfect, that he didn't have to hide his emotions to succeed, was life-changing. And as they left the gala together, Jack felt something shift inside him. It was a feeling he couldn't describe, but he knew that it was the start of something beautiful, something he had never allowed himself to experience before. Emily had shown him the way, and for the first time, Jack felt ready to walk down that path with her, not as a client and consultant, but as two people who were beginning to understand each other on a deeper level. The journey had just begun, but for Jack, it felt like he was finally home. After the charity gala, something inside Jack Parker shifted. The man who had walked into the event with uncertainty and discomfort had left feeling lighter, more open to the possibility of connection, not just with others, but with himself. He realized, as the days went on, that he had been living his life behind walls, constantly hiding from his true emotions and the world around him. Emily Lawson had shown him that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was the strength he needed to rebuild his life. As the weeks passed, their relationship deepened, no longer just about therapy or business. Emily was no longer just the consultant helping Jack fix his life, she had become his guide, his support, and, in many ways, his anchor. Jack started to look forward to their sessions, not just because they helped him grow, but because being with Emily felt like a sense of peace he had never known. She was kind, patient, and always present, and in her presence, he felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in years. One afternoon, Jack found himself sitting in his office, staring out the window at the city below, when Emily called. "Jack," she said, her voice soft but filled with a sense of urgency, "there's something I need to talk to you about. Can you meet me this evening?" Jack's heart skipped a beat. There was something in her tone that made him nervous. "Of course. I'll be there," he replied, his mind racing with questions. That evening, Jack arrived at the quiet cafe where Emily had asked to meet. He found her sitting at a corner table, looking calm and collected as always, but her eyes betrayed something more, something she wasn't saying. She motioned for him to sit, and as he did, she took a deep breath before speaking. "Jack," she began slowly, "I've been working with you for a while now, and I've seen how much you've changed. But there's something I think you need to understand about yourself, about us." Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean?" he asked. His voice low, unsure of where this conversation was going. Emily paused for a moment, her gaze focused on him. "What I'm trying to say is that this connection between us, what we've built, it's not just professional anymore. It's personal. And I think we both know that," she said, her voice soft but firm. Jack's heart began to race. He had sensed it, too, but he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge it. He had been so focused on his own healing and the business that he had pushed away the feelings he was starting to develop for Emily. I don't know what to say," he stammered, unsure of how to respond. "Jack, you don't have to say anything right now," Emily said gently. "I just wanted to be honest with you. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I care about you, Jack. I think I always have, even from the moment I started working with you." Jack was stunned, the weight of her words sinking in. He had known, on some level, that he was drawn to Emily, but hearing her admit it made everything real. His mind raced. He wanted to say something, to acknowledge his own feelings, but the fear he had been carrying for so long threatened to choke him. "I care about you, too, Emily," Jack finally said, his voice raw. "But I'm scared. I've been so focused on keeping control of everything, of my life, my business, and now I'm not sure how to let go." Emily reached across the table, her hand gently touching his. "Jack, you don't have to have all the answers right now. This isn't about perfection. It's about being real, about being honest with ourselves and each other. You don't have to be afraid of what's next. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Jack looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he didn't have to be the man who had everything under control. For the first time, he allowed himself to simply be. "I don't want to run anymore," Jack said, his voice filled with emotion. "I've spent so many years running from my feelings, from the truth. But I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be with you, Emily. I want to see where this can go." Emily smiled, her eyes shining with warmth and relief. "Then, let's take it one step at a time," she said softly. And in that moment, Jack knew that his life had finally taken a turn toward something real. No longer was he the cold-hearted CEO who couldn't connect with others. With Emily by his side, he was becoming the man he had always wanted to be, a man who was capable of love, vulnerability, and most of all, healing. The journey wasn't over, but it was no longer about fixing what was broken. It was about building something new, something strong, something that could withstand whatever challenges came their way. And as Jack and Emily walked out of the cafe together, their hands intertwined, Jack felt a sense of peace he had never known before. For the first time, he truly believed that love could heal even the deepest of wounds. The weeks that followed were transformative for Jack and Emily. What had begun as a professional relationship, built on the premise of fixing Jack's life, had now blossomed into something neither of them could have anticipated. They were no longer just therapist and client, business partners, or two people working through deep emotional wounds. They were two souls beginning to understand each other on a profound level, learning what it meant to truly connect. Jack had always been a man who kept everything inside, a man who built his empire on logic, strategy, and control, but Emily was different. She had opened a door in his heart that he had long kept shut. He had been terrified of letting anyone in, terrified of what it meant to trust someone with his emotions. But now, with Emily, it was different. She had never once pushed him too hard or tried to force him to face his pain before he was ready. Instead, she had created a safe space where he could just be himself, flaws and all. One evening, as Jack sat in his office after hours, he found himself staring out at the city lights, reflecting on everything that had changed since Emily had come into his life. He had grown in ways he never thought possible, and he realized that the fear he once carried no longer held him back. He was ready to take the next step, not just in his personal life, but in every aspect of his existence. He wanted to open up even more, to let Emily into his world completely. But he was still uncertain about how to bridge the gap between his fears and his desires. It was in that moment of deep thought that Emily called him, her voice light and warm as always. "Jack," she said, "I've been thinking about us, and I think it's time we talk about the future. I don't mean just our relationship, but everything." Jack felt a wave of nervous excitement wash over him. He knew this conversation was coming. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to sound casual, though his heart raced. "I think we've both learned so much from each other," Emily continued. "But I also think it's time we step forward together. Not just as two people healing, but as a team, someone who shares not just the highs, but the lows as well." Jack swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. Emily had always been so confident, so sure of herself, but now he could hear a hint of uncertainty in her voice. She was testing the waters, just as he was. "I'm ready for that," Jack said softly, his voice filled with conviction. "I don't want to hold back anymore. I know I've been distant, but with you, I want to be all in." The words felt like a weight lifting off his chest, and for the first time, Jack felt a deep sense of relief. Emily had been his guide through so much, but now, he was ready to walk alongside her as an equal. "Good," Emily said with a smile in her voice. "Then let's take this one step at a time. We don't need to have all the answers right now, but we can face everything together." They talked for hours that evening, sharing their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future. Jack realized that in just a short time, Emily had become more than just a therapist, a consultant, or a partner in business. She had become his anchor, his reason to believe in a future filled with love, connection, and possibility. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened even further. Jack, once so closed off, began to allow himself to truly feel again, to experience the joy of vulnerability. He found himself spending more time with Emily, not just during work hours, but outside of them as well. They went for walks in the park, shared quiet dinners together, and talked about everything from their childhoods to their hopes for the future. Each conversation, each shared moment, brought them closer together. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Jack realized how much he had changed. He had gone from being a man driven solely by his career and ambition, to someone who understood that love, connection, and trust were just as important. Emily had shown him the value of letting go, of embracing the messy, beautiful parts of life that he had spent so long avoiding. One night, as they stood together on the balcony of his penthouse, looking out at the city below, Jack took Emily's hand in his. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, "but I know I want to face it with you." Emily looked up at him, her eyes soft and filled with warmth. "I feel the same way, Jack. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And with those words, Jack knew that his life had found a new direction. He had come so far from the man he once was, the cold, calculating CEO who pushed everyone away. Now, he was learning what it meant to love and to be loved in return. With Emily by his side, Jack felt ready for whatever the future had in store. The journey they had started together was far from over, but Jack knew that with Emily, there was nothing he couldn't face. Together, they had found something more valuable than success, more important than wealth. They had found each other. As the months passed, Jack and Emily's relationship continued to flourish, becoming something more profound than either of them had anticipated. The walls Jack had spent his life building were slowly crumbling, and with each passing day, he felt himself becoming a new version of the man he had always hoped to be. He had once defined himself by his career, his wealth, and his ability to control everything around him, but now, he found himself defining his success by his relationships, by the ability to connect with people, and most importantly, by the woman who had helped him rediscover his heart, Emily. They had become inseparable, not just as partners in life but as partners in a journey of healing. Jack found himself looking forward to every moment spent with her, whether it was sharing a quiet evening at home, taking walks through the city, or simply talking about their hopes and dreams. Emily had given him the greatest gift, permission to be vulnerable, to open up, and to let go of the burdens he had been carrying for so long. One evening, as they were walking through the park, Emily turned to Jack with a thoughtful expression on her face. "Jack," she said, her voice soft, "I've been thinking a lot about the future, and I want to ask you something." Jack looked at her, his heart quickening at the seriousness of her tone. "What is it?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emily stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him fully. "I know we've been through a lot together, and I know that we've both changed in ways we never imagined. But I think we're ready for the next step. I want to build a future with you, Jack. A real future." Jack's heart swelled with emotion. He had never been the type of man who believed in fairy tales or quick decisions, but with Emily, everything felt different. He knew, deep in his soul, that this was the right decision. He had never felt more certain of anything in his life. "Emily, I've never been more ready for anything," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've spent my entire life being afraid of the unknown, of opening myself up to someone. But with you, I feel like I've finally found the courage to face the future. And I want to face it with you." Emily smiled, her eyes lighting up with happiness. She stepped closer to him, her hand gently brushing against his. "I know we can make this work, Jack. Together, we can face anything. We've already come so far." Jack nodded, his chest tight with a mixture of gratitude and love. In that moment, he realized that his life had been divided into two distinct chapters, the time before he met Emily, and the time after. The man he had been before her, the cold, guarded CEO, felt like a distant memory. The man he was now, vulnerable yet strong, capable of loving and being loved, was the man he had always longed to become. As they continued their walk through the park, Jack knew that he was ready for whatever came next. He wasn't afraid anymore. With Emily by his side, he knew they could overcome anything. Their journey together had only just begun, but Jack no longer felt the need to rush. For the first time in his life, he was willing to take things one step at a time, to savor the moments of growth and healing that came with each day. And as they stood on a quiet bridge overlooking the water, Jack pulled Emily into his arms, holding her close as he whispered, "I'm so grateful for you, Emily. You've shown me a side of myself I never knew existed, and I can't imagine my life without you in it." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with tenderness and affection. "And I'm so grateful for you, Jack," she whispered back. "You've opened your heart in a way I never thought possible. I believe in us, in what we can build together." Jack smiled, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment that he had never known before. This was the life he had always dreamed of, one filled with love, understanding, and the promise of a future built on trust and connection. The road ahead would not always be easy, but with Emily by his side, Jack knew he was ready for anything. Together, they had already overcome so much, and Jack knew that whatever challenges came their way, they would face them hand in hand. As Jack and Emily's relationship continued to deepen, they both realized that the next chapter of their journey would be one filled with growth, change, and new challenges. Jack, once a man consumed by his career and the pursuit of success, had learned to embrace vulnerability and emotional connection. Emily had been his guide, his support, and the one person who had helped him discover the power of love and self-acceptance. It was a transformation he had never imagined possible, but now, with Emily by his side, he couldn't picture his life any other way. Their connection had become stronger with each passing day, and they had both learned to face their fears and embrace the future together. But as they moved forward, a new challenge presented itself, one that neither of them had anticipated. Jack's business, once his sole focus, was facing unexpected pressure. A major deal was at risk of falling apart, and Jack found himself spending long nights in his office, trying to navigate the crisis. Emily, ever the supportive partner, stood by his side, offering advice, encouragement, and a steady presence as Jack navigated the stress of the situation. It was a test of their relationship, one that would force them to confront not only the external pressures of their world but also the internal struggles they had both faced in the past. One evening, as Jack sat in his office, staring at his computer screen, he felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. The deal was slipping away, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to lose everything he had worked so hard to build. Emily walked into the office, her calm presence immediately grounding him. "Jack," she said softly, "you've done everything you can. You can't control everything. Sometimes, you have to trust that the pieces will fall into place." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with frustration. "I can't let this fail, Emily. Everything I've worked for is on the line. I can't afford to make a mistake." Emily moved closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You've already built something incredible, Jack. You've created a legacy, not just through your business, but through the way you've allowed yourself to grow and change. That's what really matters. If this deal doesn't work out, it's not the end. It's just a setback. And whatever happens, we will get through it together." Jack sighed, feeling the weight of her words. For so long, he had measured his success by the deals he closed, the numbers on his spreadsheets, and the accolades he received. But Emily was reminding him of something far more important, the value of the journey, not just the destination. She had shown him that success was not just about achievements, but about the relationships, the growth, and the love that defined his life. As the days passed, Jack found himself slowly letting go of the pressure he had been putting on himself. He still cared deeply about the deal, but he no longer felt like his entire future depended on it. He trusted that, whatever happened, he would be okay. And more importantly, he trusted that Emily would be there by his side, supporting him every step of the way. The deal ultimately fell through, but instead of seeing it as a failure, Jack began to view it as an opportunity for growth. It was a reminder that life was unpredictable, and that sometimes, the best things came when they were least expected. In the days that followed, Jack and Emily found themselves growing even closer. Jack began to understand that his worth was not tied to his business or his success, but to the love he shared with Emily and the person he had become. And Emily, too, found herself growing in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had always been a strong, independent woman, but being with Jack had taught her the importance of vulnerability, of allowing someone to truly see her and accept her for who she was. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of Jack's penthouse, Emily turned to him with a smile. "You know," she said softly, "I never imagined my life would turn out like this. I never imagined I would find someone like you." Jack smiled back, his eyes filled with warmth. "I feel the same way, Emily. I never thought I could change, but you showed me that it's possible." They sat in silence for a moment, enjoying the comfort of each other's company. The world outside seemed distant, and for the first time in a long time, Jack felt truly at peace. He had faced his fears, confronted his past, and allowed himself to be vulnerable. And in doing so, he had found something more valuable than any business deal or accolade. He had found love, connection, and a future filled with possibilities. As they sat there, side by side, Jack knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with Emily by his side. Together, they had built something real, something that could withstand whatever came their way. And for the first time in his life, Jack knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. As Jack and Emily continued to navigate life together, they found themselves in a place they had never imagined, both stronger and more vulnerable than they had ever been. The journey they had taken, full of growth, setbacks, and discoveries, had brought them closer than either of them could have predicted. They had learned how to support each other, how to face life's challenges hand in hand, and, most importantly, how to love without fear. Yet, despite the progress they had made, they both knew that their path was far from over. Life, as it always does, had a way of throwing new obstacles their way, and now, the biggest challenge was one they had to face together: the future. Jack's company was expanding rapidly, and with that expansion came an overwhelming amount of pressure. There were new partnerships to navigate, new challenges to face, and, inevitably, new sacrifices to be made. Jack, ever the determined leader, found himself overwhelmed by the demands of his business once again. Late nights became more frequent, and the work that had once consumed him returned with a vengeance. Emily, as always, was by his side, offering support and advice, but even she could see the toll it was taking on him. One evening, after Jack had spent another long day in meetings and conference calls, Emily sat across from him at their dinner table, watching him with concern. "Jack," she said softly, "I know how much this means to you, but I can see you're pushing yourself too hard. You can't do everything alone. You have to trust the people around you." Jack, looking tired and stressed, rubbed his temples. "I know, Emily," he replied, his voice low, "but this company is my life. I can't afford to let things slip now. I've come too far to back down." Emily reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Jack, I believe in you, and I know you've built something incredible. But you can't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You've learned to open up and trust, to let others help you, and it's time to put that into practice." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude and love. He knew she was right. For so long, he had tried to do everything on his own, afraid to show weakness or vulnerability. But with Emily, he had learned that real strength came from asking for help, from being willing to lean on those who cared about him. "You're right," he said, squeezing her hand. "I've spent so much of my life trying to control everything. But I'm ready to let go of that, to trust more. I don't want to lose what we have because of work." Emily smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "You won't lose me, Jack. We're in this together, and we'll figure it out. We always do." As the days passed, Jack made a conscious effort to lighten his load, to trust his team more, and to give Emily the space she needed in his life. He knew that his company was important, but so was the life they were building together. Slowly, the weight began to lift. Jack found himself able to enjoy the simple moments with Emily, the quiet dinners, the walks in the park, the late-night conversations about everything and nothing. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had found a balance between his career and his personal life. It was a new kind of success, one that wasn't measured by the number of deals he closed or the profit margins he reached, but by the quality of the relationships he had built and the love he had found. And then, one day, as they were walking through the city, Jack stopped and turned to Emily, his expression serious. "Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how far we've come, and about what's next for us." Emily looked at him, her heart racing with anticipation. "What is it, Jack?" she asked, sensing the importance of the moment. Jack took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't want to wait any longer. I want to build a future with you, Emily. I want to make sure that, no matter what happens, you're always a part of my life." Emily's breath caught in her throat as she realized what he was saying. Jack Parker, the man who had once been so afraid of commitment, was now standing in front of her, ready to take the biggest step of all. "Are you saying," she began, her voice trembling slightly. Jack nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yes, Emily. I want to marry you." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she looked at the man who had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. "Yes, Jack," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." In that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. All the struggles, the challenges, the moments of doubt, they had led to this. Together, they had built something stronger than either of them had ever dreamed of. And now, as they stood there in the heart of the city, hand in hand, they knew that the future was theirs to shape, together. The days that followed Jack's proposal were filled with excitement and anticipation. It was a new beginning for both of them, a new chapter in their lives that neither had seen coming. Jack and Emily had come so far from where they had started, and now, with the promise of marriage on the horizon, they were ready to build a future together. The wedding planning was a whirlwind, full of decisions, small details, and moments of pure joy. For Jack, it was surreal to see how far he had come, once a man who had lived in the shadows of his own success, afraid to truly open up to anyone, and now he was preparing to marry the woman who had helped him rediscover his heart. Emily, too, felt a sense of wonder. She had always been independent, but now, she was learning what it meant to truly rely on someone else, to trust not just in herself, but in the love that had bloomed between her and Jack. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments when the weight of their pasts threatened to pull them back into old habits, but each time that happened, they faced it together. They learned to communicate openly, to navigate the challenges life threw at them with patience and understanding. And as the wedding day approached, Jack and Emily knew that they were ready for whatever came next. On the day of their wedding, everything fell into place. The sun was shining, the venue was beautiful, and the atmosphere was filled with a sense of warmth and love. As Jack stood at the altar, waiting for Emily to walk down the aisle, his heart raced. He had never been this nervous in his life, but it was a different kind of nervousness, a nervousness born of excitement, of the realization that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. And then, he saw her. Emily, in a stunning white gown, walking toward him with a smile that could light up the entire room. In that moment, everything else faded away. There was no past, no future, only the two of them, standing at the threshold of a new life together. As they exchanged vows, Jack couldn't help but think back to everything they had been through. From the moment they had met, he had never imagined that it would lead to this: marriage, love, a future built on trust and vulnerability. Emily had taught him the true meaning of love, and now, he was ready to give her all that he had to offer. As they kissed, sealing their vows, the room erupted in applause, but all Jack could think about was the woman standing beside him, the woman who had changed his life in every way possible. After the wedding, as they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Jack whispered in Emily's ear, "I can't believe we're here. I never thought I'd find someone like you." Emily smiled, her eyes filled with love. "You did, Jack. And you've become someone I never thought I'd find either." In that moment, they both knew that the journey they had started together was just beginning. The future was theirs to shape, and they would face it together, with love, with courage, and with the knowledge that they were no longer defined by the fears and insecurities that had once held them back. Together, they had found something more valuable than success, more meaningful than wealth, true love, a love that healed the wounds of the past and gave them both the strength to move forward. The journey ahead would be filled with new challenges, but with each other by their side, Jack and Emily knew that there was nothing they couldn't face. They had already conquered their pasts, and now, they were ready to build a future together, a future where love was the foundation, and nothing could tear them apart.